I've never been to Lake Lanier, but I've seen it, and you've probably seen it too, scrolling on your phone. You see boats everywhere, music blasting on pontoon boats, people jumping off docks and rafts. It looks like a nice little vacation spot. But then you scroll down further, and you start seeing, don't swim there. That lake is haunted. That lake is cursed. Too many bodies. It's built over graves, and then the vibe shifts. So what is it? Is there something underneath the water that makes you uneasy and you don't even know why? I'm Lisa.
And I'm Samantha.
Welcome back to X-UMED. So first of all, Lake Lanier is not a natural lake. It didn't form over thousands of years. It was engineered. In 1957, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers closed the gates on Buford Dam and flooded 38,000 acres of land alongside the Chattahoochee River. They flooded homes, they flooded forests, they flooded roads, churches, cemeteries, and they flooded what remained of a town called Oscarville. But start that over. But Oscarville wasn't an abandoned ghost town. It was literally erased in 1912. And that's where the story begins. Now, first of all, before I continue, I feel like I need to give a trigger warning. This whole story revolves around the land before the lake was even formed, and it's racial issues. We don't like to talk about that kind of stuff, but you can't erase history. What happened, happened. It's 2026 now, and most of us should know by now that people are people, but this happened, and we can't make it unhappen.
Wonder if this is the same river that Alan Jackson was singing about.
Oh yeah, the Chattahoochee River. So this takes place in Forsyth County, Georgia, in the early 1900s. You got to think red clay roads, cotton fields, pine trees, lining uneven fences. By 1912, roughly 1,000 Black residents lived in the county, and many of them owned farmland. That detail is important. Land ownership in the Jim Crow South meant economic power, stability, independence, and that made some people mad. Oscarville is one of the communities where Black families built something sustainable. They had churches, schools, generational land. Then on September 5th, 1912, everything changed. 18-year-old May Crow, who was a white woman, was found unconscious near her home. She had suffered severe trauma. She was beaten up really bad, and she was sexually assaulted. She later died from her injuries, and newspapers quickly reported that she had named alleged attackers before she passed. Whether that's true or not really proven. But the suspicion fell on the local Black men, because why would it not?
Naturally.
Within days, arrests were made, but what followed wasn't a trial. September 10th, 1912, the Forsyth County Jail. Rob Edwards sits in a cell. Outside, a crowd gathers. The Atlanta Constitution would later describe it like this. A mob numbering several hundred citizens stormed the county jail. Citizens, not rioters. Not a lynch mob. Citizens. That word matters, because they were trying to soften what was happening.
Yeah.
It was literally a lynch mob. The crowd broke through the jail doors, and accounts from later historians and regional newspapers describe Edwards being dragged into the street. Some reporters state he was shot multiple times before being hanged from a telephone pole in the town square. They literally lynched him. There was no resistance strong enough to stop it. Nobody stopped it. There were no prosecutions afterwards either. No arrest, no legal consequences. So the law just literally did not intervene.
Well, hell, there wasn't any rights. There was nothing until, 1965, I think?
Yeah, but I gotta think that they had some rights. I mean, they were free men. They owned land, but still limited rights.
Yeah, very limited.
What this mob demonstrated that day was the legal system would not protect Black residents in Forsyth County. And when the law steps back, terror steps forward. Now, at the trial, 2 teenage boys were arrested in connection with May Crow's death. Ernest Knox, who was 16 years old, and Oscar Daniel, who was 17. Their trial lasted roughly 1 day. Just one. An all-white jury. Newspaper accounts described the proceedings as orderly and efficient. You know that was not the case.
They didn't even have their peers.
Efficient. That word appears repeatedly in the 1912 coverage. Efficient justice, efficient conviction, efficient sentencing.
And you know what? Once you start projecting, well, you keep saying efficient.
Yeah.
Which makes you think like they already know that it really wasn't.
Exactly.
It wasn't fair, so they're projecting, trying to project that further on.
Exactly. In this context, it means the outcome was never in doubt. They were found guilty. They were sentenced to death. And the execution was scheduled publicly. It was cut and dry.
Yeah, so it was already decided before they even went to trial.
Exactly.
That's what
Their
it seems
guilt
like.
was decided already, yeah. October 25th, 1912 was the hanging. Thousands gathered. Estimates range between 5,000 to 8,000 spectators. Families attended. Children attended, which is pretty messed up. Some accounts mention vendors selling refreshments at this thing. Like it's a festival.
Oh, like the last time that I remember in history on like a festival for an execution was Ted Bundy in what, like 1987, 1989.
Okay, well, that's kind of justified.
Well, yeah, but still, that's...
Yeah. The Atlanta Jesus, I can't talk today. The Atlanta Journal reported that the execution was conducted without disorder. That's what it said. Without disorder. There's something wrong about how calm that is, you know? As if a public hanging of 2 teenagers is simply just an event, like we said, like a festival. They treated this as an afternoon gathering, but for Black families watching, it was a warning. Of course it was. Stay, and this is what happens, is what they were telling them.
That's why it was public, probably.
Well, yeah, but I think the whole thing was staged. I think someone else beat that girl up, and then someone lied about her naming who did it. I think it was all set up.
Probably, yeah.
So what they were doing was intimidation. They're like, you are Black families, you own land, I don't like that, get out.
Well, this was also like during the time where the KKK was something normal to see.
Yeah.
They were in politics. They were in the government. They were in everywhere. Law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, intimidation was only the beginning of this. After the execution, white men began riding through Black neighborhoods at night, firing rifles into the air, leaving handwritten notes on doors.
Try not to get into what was written on the doors?
No.
Okay, good.
Did not include that.
Good.
Except for things like, it would just say, leave by sundown. Homes were burned. They set homes on fire. Churches were set on fire. And the families ended up fleeing with whatever they could carry. Livestock was left behind. Those poor animals.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody take care of them.
No, I'm sure people moved in real quick.
I hope so, to take care of the animals at least. I don't like hearing that livestock was left behind, you know. Crops were unharvested, furniture abandoned. They just gathered up everything that they could carry and left. Within months, Forsyth County's Black population had been almost entirely expelled, over 1,000 people displaced. Oscarville emptied. Not because it failed, not because people chose to leave, but because they were driven out under threat of death. So the first drowning wasn't water. It was silence. This was being done to them. Nobody stepped up and said anything. For decades after that, Forsyth remained overwhelmingly white, like too white. It became what historians refer to as a Sundown County. Black travelers were warned not to stop after dark. And decades later, the federal government
Trying to sound Southern now?
And decades later, the federal government came for the land. By the 1940s, Oscarville as a living Black community was already gone, but the land remained. Fields changed ownership. Churches deteriorated. Graveyards became overgrowth. And then in 1946, the federal government passed the Rivers and Harbors Act. Buried inside it was authorization for a new project, Buford Dam. The official purpose was straightforward: flood control for the Chattahoochee River, hydroelectric power, a long-term water supply for Atlanta. It sounded practical and necessary, and it sounded like progress. Construction began in 1950, and this is where something messed up enters the story. Because in order to create a lake, you must choose what to drown.
I mean, not like this whole story isn't messed up to begin with.
Yeah.
So they chose that city to drown.
Yep.
I almost kind of feel like with everything that had happened, yeah, drown it, start over. Like, there's bad mojo there.
Yeah, in a way, you're right. But
Too much negative history. Just get rid of it.
yeah. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers began acquiring land, 38,000 acres. That's a lot
Yes.
of land. 38,000 acres is not empty wilderness. It was farms and homes and businesses and roads and churches and cemeteries. Families living there, now mostly white families, decades after the expulsion, received notices of condemnation. You know, your houses
Condemned.
are all condemned. Go away. Compensation was offered, relocation plans arranged. On paper, this looked legit. It looked legal. It was documented. But there's something unsettling about the language in federal reports. Structural clearance, disinterment, relocation. They're all fancy words that mean something that's actually kind of dark. You know?
Extinction.
Well, disinterment means digging up the dead, and clearance means erasing what stood there. This is the part that makes people say it's cursed. The graves. Official records state that approximately 20 cemeteries were relocated before flooding began. But, you know what happens when they relocate cemeteries.
Yeah.
I think we've mentioned this in a couple episodes now.
It usually doesn't happen.
Exactly. The process went like this. Survey teams identified marked graves, remains were exhumed, and placed into new coffins if needed, transported to higher ground, reburied, markers replaced. But here's a detail that complicates everything. I hate this word. Rural burial practices in the late 1800s and early 1900s were inconsistent, especially in Black communities that had limited access to formal record keeping. Some graves were marked only with field stones, some with wooden crosses. Wood rots. Field stones shift, like we just probably walked over some today.
Probably,
We've seen how they shift. If a grave had no formal documentation, if no living descendant came forward, if a marker had deteriorated, it could have been missed. Local historians and descendants have questioned whether every burial site was identified. And the honest answer is that there is no perfect certainty.
Especially the rock stones were usually just pick up a piece of rock, fairly large size, either carve or paint into it.
Yeah. I mean, we saw headstones today that had things etched into it, or, like raised letters, and they were so worn we couldn't even read them.
Yeah, a lot of those were, what was it, like 1878 that we saw that are like that? I mean, even like 1940s.
Yeah.
Bad marble, bad
What?
granite. Bad marble or bad granite.
This all means that it's possible, even likely, that some graves still remain beneath the water, unmarked, undisturbed, unmoved. In 1956, the gates at Buford Dam were closed. Water began to rise, not in a dramatic tidal wave, but slowly and steadily. Fields flooded first, then the roads, then foundations. Some homes were burned before submersion to reduce debris. Others were simply left intact. Imagine watching water just swallow your porch. Like, imagine opening up your front door and water just rushing in. I mean, they weren't there for it, but...
I'm just imagining Titanic.
Yeah. Yeah, so imagine that, and then imagine it covering your steps, and you can see it rising up the kitchen window, like just watching your house be swallowed. Imagine trees drowning, standing upright. Forests became underwater forests. Church foundations sank. Concrete does not dissolve. And by 1957, Lake Lanier was full. Now, they cut down some of these trees, but not all of them. Oscarville was gone, but this time beneath 100 feet of water in some places. When people call it cursed, though, a lot of them point to how many people die in there. Over 700 people have died in Lake Lanier.
Oh, hold on, now? From the time it was completed to now?
I think so, yeah.
That's a lot.
Sounds like a lot.
I mean, how many? Okay. You said it was completed in 1978?
1957.
Yeah, I'm not doing that math and trying to figure out, like, how many people per year. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, don't do that. So yeah, that's not normal for a lake. It's very high but it's not supernatural, it's structural. Lake Lanier is not a bowl carved, like a smooth bowl carved out, you know? It's a flooded valley. Valleys are uneven. Before flooding, they didn't clear out every tree. There's some forest still underneath all that water. They didn't level every structure. Some of these houses, some of these churches still stand exactly how they were. They're just submerged in 100 feet of water. Removing all of the timber would have been too costly and time consuming, so they just left it. Because the easy way, it's always the easy way.
But yeah.
So they left a lot of it, which means underwater there are still tree trunks and branches and root systems and old dock frames, concrete foundations, stone steps. The lake bottom is not predictable. It drops abruptly in places. 10 feet become 40 feet. 40 feet become 60 feet. Visibility underwater can shrink to inches within seconds, and that's where accidents start to happen. A typical drowning in Lake Lanier goes something like this. A strong swimmer dives from a boat and the water looks calm at first. Sunlight's reflecting off the surface and the swimmer enters cleanly. For the first 2 seconds, everything feels normal. Then their foot catches on something submerged. Maybe a tree limb, maybe an old dock support. Instinctively, they try to jerk away. But underwater, panic distorts your direction. You don't know what's up and what's down.
And it's usually said to go against your instinct because your instinct somehow is to swim down thinking you're swimming up.
Yeah, so they get stuck and they ultimately end up drowning. Divers have gone in there, with their air tanks and everything, like scuba divers, to check out the town because there are cemeteries down there. Headstones still down there. I've seen pictures of them.
I'm looking at some of them right now.
Yeah. When the water level goes down a little bit, the top of a church sticks up out of the water. It's crazy. So divers will go down there to look at the drowned city.
Well, that's like a diver's gold mine, especially if you're not, I don't know how far Lake Lanier is from like a coastline or what kind of other opportunities they have, but this is like a historical opportunity. These are things that you don't normally ever see underwater. And
yeah,
I would love to do scuba diving. I would like to see a graveyard underwater, but
it's dark under there, and some people lose their sense of direction and they end up swimming through a forest and all of their equipment will get stuck in these trees. Like, imagine trying to swim through a bunch of trees, not seaweed, literal trees that have been drowned. You're gonna drown, and it happens all the time there. So then the recovery divers go down because this diver hasn't come up. They don't know what happened to them. They just never came back up, and they were supposed to, right? Too much time has passed. So they go down there. They can't see far. And all they can do is just kind of swim with their hands out, like feeling for things. Because it's too dark to see anything. That's actually worse than like a haunting. You know what I mean? Like, that's my worst fear, is being underwater, being deep underwater, not being able to see anything, and just having to feel my way and not knowing what's around me.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Now imagine on a summer night, right? 2 boats approach a narrow channel. One operator's been drinking. The other assumes right of way. They're going like maybe 30 miles an hour. When a human body hits water at 30 miles per hour, it doesn't feel like water. It feels like asphalt. You can break your ribs. You can break your spine, or at least compress it. You can get a concussion. and then you lose consciousness and you sink. Ugh. Okay. The rescue crews arrive. By morning, the lake is calm again. Kids are swimming in a cove nearby, and nobody has any idea what happened. Because a lot of times when people drown in this lake, they're not found.
And with how large it is, not surprised.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it was a whole town, 38,000 acres. And it's creepy to know that that lake wasn't there and people actually lived there. You know, they lived in houses and they went to church and they buried their dead and they walked down the roads. You know, it's so weird to think about. Like they built fires and stuff. And now all of that is underwater, intact, most of it.
And
Still there.
it looks like a resort now.
Yeah.
That's the disgusting part.
It kind of is. I mean, they didn't kill anybody to make the lake. It's just the fact that what they didn't do before they drowned the town.
Yeah.
It's creepy. You go down there scuba diving and you realize, oh my God, I'm swimming through a cemetery. There's headstones. So obviously they didn't get far with removing the headstones or the bodies. They probably started just like in Prospect Cemetery. Yeah, they started, but it never got finished.
I'm tired of this. Let's move on to something else. I'm done.
Yeah, like fuck this. There's too many. I'm not doing this. Divers who've worked recovery operations at Lanier have described it as descending into ink. You drop below the surface, sunlight disappears quickly, it gets cold. Your flashlight beam hits suspended sediment and reflects back at you. Like all you can see is just, you know, if you open your eyes underwater in a lake, all you see is like floating sand and, you know, seaweed and stuff. You can't see anything else.
And with the flashlight, that kind of just blinds you.
Yeah. You can feel tree trunks. You can feel branches scrape you and scrape your gear. Sometimes you feel structures. And sometimes you feel a body before you recognize what you've touched. That psychological toll builds over time. Like, the more you think about it.
What do you mean you feel a body? Are they
These
rising from the
bodies-
dead?
No, they're just floating in there. Nobody ever found them. They
Okay,
drowned in there and nobody ever found them.
I'm thinking about the cemetery. Are they coming back up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. That might be a possibility. Who knows? That's creepy. That's something creepy that I didn't think about until now. But yeah, it's very likely, I would think. Especially since they were probably only buried in pine boxes. Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, I think so. So now there's folklore around this lake because you start finding bodies in lakes and people start disappearing, and then you know the history of the land before it became a lake. Of course, there's going to be folklore around it. And wouldn't that be a great campfire story to tell? You know, you're camping out at Lake Lanier and you tell that story. No one's going to want to go swimming the next day.
I don't think I could do it.
No.
I don't think I could ever go in there.
So April 16th of 1958, on Lanier Bridge. It's late. Two young women, Susie Roberts and Dahlia Parker Young, leave a roadhouse after an evening out. They drive across the bridge that spans the entire lake. They never arrive home. The car vanishes and there was a search effort, but Lake Lanier is huge and it's deep and it's dark. And at every turn when you're trying to look for something in there, there is something that is going to be in your way. A year later, in 1959, a body surfaces in the lake, a woman in a blue dress. Her hands are missing, likely the result of post-mortem decomposition and the animals eating her.
Are there fish in this lake?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Just a
inevitable.
question.
Yeah, it's inevitable that fish are in every body of water except like pools and stuff. Even if you don't put them in there, they end up being in there. So she's buried as unidentified and time passes. Whispers begin, and drivers claim to see a woman walking along Lanier Bridge at night with wet hair, wearing a blue dress, and she's completely silent. Some say she approaches your vehicle, others say she appears as they get closer. For decades, the story circulates locally. And then in 1990, a severe drought lowers the lake level dramatically. A submerged car is discovered. Inside are skeletal remains. The vehicle is identified as belonging to the missing woman from 1958. The remains are identified as Dahlia Parker Young, but the identification did not end the sightings. If anything, it kind of
Boosted it?
yeah, exactly, boosted it. Because the lake had given something back for once. They found something. Because it's like the lake will take you and nobody ever sees you again. This time, they were discovered. They actually found someone who disappeared. And
Yeah,
the car.
well, yeah, that's one of the more unusual things for that lake, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Positive, unusual.
And a ghost story always starts with some kind of a tragedy. Folklore rarely appears out of nowhere. The Lady of the Lake becomes shorthand. It becomes a symbol and a way to say something about this place isn't right. So in Lake Lanier, there is a woman with wet hair and a blue dress walking Lanier Bridge, the ghost of her. Now fast forward to the 2000s, then the 2010s, then TikToks, and YouTube shorts, and all kinds of other reels and clips. Most haunted lake in America, 700 plus deaths built over a black town that was burned. But here's what's interesting about it. Even when the curse narrative exaggerates details, the unease remains rooted in something real. The expulsion of Oscarville, the lynching, the public hanging described as orderly, the submerged cemeteries, the repeated drownings. The lake becomes a container for unresolved tension. And we're all just kind of sensitive to that, like we hold on to stuff like that as human beings.
Yeah.
So you go to Lake Lanier and you just feel kind of this eeriness and like a heaviness. Even if you don't know what had ever happened there, it just doesn't feel right. So yeah, people say that Lake Lanier is haunted, but I mean, I wouldn't say that this story is supernatural in any way. It's just the haunting legend. In a way, it makes sense because of what happened on that land before it was a lake. And if you're thinking in terms of like curses and things like that, the land could have been cursed. And then what made it worse is that they didn't move the bodies in the graveyards. They just drowned them. And all of that just kind of makes you think, what if that lake is cursed? Because something very dark happened underneath that on the land. You know what I mean?
I would kind of be surprised if it wasn't cursed.
If you believe in that kind of stuff. I also heard somewhere that, remember when I said that there's a church underneath that lake? And when, I don't know if it's the same church, there were a couple of churches, but you can see the top of the church sticking up out of the water when the water levels go down. But there is like a myth or a legend that you can hear one of the church bells ringing if you're in a boat and out in the water. And if you happen to be like over the part of the town where that church is, you can hear the church bell ringing.
I'm kind of surprised that it didn't decay away, rust off.
The bell?
Yeah.
I mean, it could have. That's not fact. How do you hear a bell ringing underwater? There's no way unless it's supernatural. So who knows?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true. Now I feel dumb. Yeah. I'm just thinking of how muffled it would be.
I don't think it would ring it all underwater.
Well, with waves, if there's any waves that go through.
You're not going to hear that. If you hear that, that's definitely supernatural.
I want to believe it.
You want to believe it's true. In the show notes, I'm going to put a couple of links in there so that you can see different pictures of Lake Lanier. I think I actually found a picture somewhere of what the town had actually looked like before it got flooded. And it's crazy to think how big this lake actually is. Like, pictures probably don't even do it justice, but even the pictures is like, whoa. So I don't like it when they say, oh yeah, most of the graves were moved, most of the bodies were dug up and, taken, because the pictures I've seen, they didn't move anybody. There are rows upon rows upon rows of headstones at the bottom of this lake.
Well, they probably would have had to build a new cemetery.
Yeah.
And we all know that, cemeteries don't pop up.
They don't pop up. Every once in a while, you'll see them building onto it or something, making more room for it.
There's no new cemeteries. They got the manpower. Okay, the the manpower it would have taken to do that, how much they would have had to pay to do that, because that's not exactly a job you would want to have. A normal person.
Well, you said that you would do it, so you must not be normal.
Well, for the pay that they were getting to do Chessman Park, yeah, I would have done it. That was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it's also an African American town. They already had absolutely no respect for anyone there. Why are they now going to want to move them? It almost feels like it's like the last thing.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Like now we got rid of you, now we're going to drown you.
Yeah, just bury and drown the history altogether. Pretend it never happened. That town doesn't even exist anymore. It's a lake. Yeah. Either way, yeah, that's why they think it's haunted. It's cursed. And people do die in that lake because it's just, even if it's not haunted or cursed, it's just dangerous. It's very dangerous to go down there scuba diving and stuff. You have to be very careful when you're on that lake because, I mean, a boat crash or anything and you can be kind of screwed and no one's going to find your body. Like, your body is going to be very hard to find, because I did hear a story about how they'll send rescue divers down there to find the people that drown, and the rescue divers don't come back either. So the lake just swallows them. They're probably all tangled up in the forest that's still underneath there. Honestly, I can definitely see that.
Oh, yeah. You would kind of think by now that they would have some kind of more regulations on being on that lake.
I'm sure they have some regulations in place. I'm sure that people in the area know the story of Lake Lanier. I mean, I'm reading it right now. It's on the internet. Everybody knows about it. It's probably a big folklore legend in that area for sure. And they probably do tell campfire stories about it. They probably have their own little lake monster like we do.
Probably. And that's a large enough lake where there's going to be tons of boating, tons of recreational water sports that brings tourist income in. They're not going to keep people off that lake.
No.
I'm thinking like having a designated swimming area, but what is the Coast Guard going to do? Is there a Coast Guard?
Probably not. Maybe in swimming areas, they have like lifeguards, but when you're vacationing on that lake, like in a cabin or, there's no regulations there. You swim at your own risk. And I'm sure you can probably enter the lake wherever you feel like it. I don't know. I've never been there. But I mean, you got to think about what happens on that lake. Accidents probably happen all the time. You got hillbillies on pontoon boats blaring music and drinking beer and shit happens.
That does sound fun.
It sounds so much fun. That's my idea of a good time. So yeah. So a lake is supposed to be a peaceful and fun vacation spot, but Lake Lanier isn't like that. Lake Lanier is layered. Under every boat engine is a road that once led somewhere. Under every dock is land that once held footsteps, roads people walked down. Under some parts of that lake floor, there are still graves that were never moved. And before the dam, and before the blue dress, before the 700 deaths, there was a courthouse in 1912. And there were headlines that called lynching efficient. There were public hangings described as without disorder. And there were night riders firing rifles into the dark. There were black families leaving land they owned because staying meant death. Oscarville didn't just fade away. It was literally expelled. And then decades later, the federal government drowned what remained. Poof, all that history gone. But history can't be erased. History happened. No matter how much we wish it didn't happen, you can't make it unhappen. So maybe there's something to that. You can't drown it. You can't burn it. You can't erase it from the books. It happened. Whether anyone even remembers it happens.
No matter how hard people try and everything that they do to make it happen, it's never going to go away.
No. People who did things way back when because they were pieces of shit, they did it. They can't undo it. It's history. It happened. You can erase it from all the books, but it happened and that energy stays. You can't drown it. It's still there. If you believe in hokey shit like we do. And we're weirdos. We just Our idea of fun is walking through a mortuary.
Hey, it's a museum.
It was fun. It was fun. It was very interesting. So yeah, that's the story of Lake Lanier. That's all I know for now.
Well, I have nothing more to contribute to that. That's just, I have so much to say, yet no words can form.
Yeah, I mean, the
There's
story
plenty
was
to
just kind of
say.
rough. There's plenty to say, but not worth saying. You know,
Nope.
no words are going to change anything that happened. And whatever you're going to say, everybody else is probably thinking anyway.
Yeah, probably.
So we thank you for listening. Next week we have, what was it? We're going to talk about Amelia Earhart. So tune in for that, because that was kind of a morbidly fun episode to do. It was very interesting.
And then eventually we have Hilatara, or Tara, however you want to pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
So back to my ancient history.
I have a lot of really cool stuff coming up, but I'm not going to say what because I don't know what order we're going to do them in yet. So I guess you'll just have to stay tuned and find out.
And do all the things that we ask you and every other person asks you to do. Like, subscribe, comment, send in requests, do all the things. It helps out.
All of the things. Yep. It just helps us grow, helps us get out there to more people. And we appreciate everyone who keeps tuning in every week and listening. And we hope you keep doing that because we have a lot of fun doing this. So hopefully we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening and have a good night.
Have a good night.